Hello everyone. Tonight's story takes us back to the summer of 1985, when a brutal crime shocked the quiet town of Narrated, Connecticut. While a husband was away on vacation with friends, his 5-month pregnant wife was found dead in their bedroom. Whoever committed this crime had laid out a careful plan, trying to mislead the police and even the medical examiner. For years, investigators were left without answers. Even with the involvement of Dr. Henry Lee, one of the most renowned forensic experts, the case seemed doomed to remain unsolved. It appeared the killer would never be brought to light until a key clue surfaced, one that would reopen the case and ultimately reveal a chilling truth. So, what really happened? Who would harm a woman expecting a child? To understand, we need to step back in time to 1985. Niantic is a small town on the southern edge of Connecticut, about a 2.5-hour drive from New York City. According to the 2010 U.S. Census, its population was just over 3,100. Life there was calm and easygoing. With the Atlantic Ocean nearby, locals often gathered in groups of 3 to 5 to enjoy weekends at the beach. And it was here, in this peaceful setting, that the tragedy took place. The central figure of this story is Ellen Sherman, a young woman 5 months pregnant. She had short, dark, smooth hair and was known as warm, friendly, and approachable. Her husband, Edward Sherman, was intelligent and successful, a community college professor with a steady income, a member of Mensa, the high IQ society, and together they ran a photography business. To outsiders, they seemed like a prosperous couple. On Friday, the 2nd of August 1985, Edward set out on a boating trip with 4 friends. The following day, he suddenly remembered that the family's yacht might have been left with the power on. He tried calling Ellen at home to ask her to check, but no one answered. By the 4th of August, 2 full days had passed without contact, and Edward grew increasingly worried. That evening, he phoned a neighbor, Joan R.'s sister, asking if she could stop by to check on Ellen. Unfortunately, Joan wasn't home and couldn't help. Still uneasy, Edward called one of Ellen's colleagues, Ryan Fredrickson, asking him to go over instead. Ryan knew Ellen well. The last time they had met, just 4 days earlier, he had noticed her eyes were red and swollen, as though she had been crying for a long time. Concerned, Ryan agreed to check the house. When he arrived, the lights were on and the air conditioner was running. It looked as if someone should have been home. He tried the front door, but it was locked strange, since Ellen rarely locked it. Ryan even used to joke with her, "Leave it unlocked like that and one day you'll get robbed." He rang the bell, but no one answered. Feeling something was terribly wrong, Ryan circled the house, peeking through windows, but the curtains were drawn tight. Uneasy, he finally decided to climb in through a side window in the hallway. As soon as Ryan climbed inside, the family dog began barking non-stop. He walked through the hallway and into the kitchen, where he noticed something troubling. The floor was littered with dog waste, a clear sign that no one had cleaned in days. His sense of dread deepened. He quickly headed upstairs, stopping at the master bedroom door. He knocked, but there was no response. Pushing the door open, a blast of cold air mixed with a foul odor hit him in the face. And then, the sight inside left him frozen in shock. Lying motionless on the bed was Ellen Sherman. She was unresponsive, her body cold. Overwhelmed, Ryan ran outside and immediately called the police. On the evening of the 4th of August 1985, officers arrived at the Sherman home. Because the case was so serious, Dr. Henry Lee, the well-known forensic expert who lived just an hour away, was also brought in to assist with the investigation. At the scene, investigators uncovered several critical clues. First clue: there were no signs of forced entry. Except for the window Ryan had pried open to get inside, every other door and window was intact. This suggested the killer was someone Ellen knew and had willingly let in, or someone disguised as a worker, like a repairman, who gained her trust. Second clue: Ellen was found in the bedroom, her body showing red marks around the neck. 3 in total, 2 of them very distinct. Scattered beads lay on the floor near the bed. A torn blue undergarment was also found on the ground, later confirmed to belong to Ellen, along with a bra and a white undergarment tossed nearby. Third clue: there were no signs of a struggle. Other than the marks on her neck, her body bore no additional injuries. Investigators found no foreign fingerprints inside the house. Valuables and cash were untouched, which allowed police to rule out robbery as a motive. Fourth clue. The bedsheet had multiple stains, including bodily fluids. Some appeared to have been partially wiped. However, in 1985, DNA testing was not advanced enough to identify who they belonged to. Fifth clue. The marks on Ellen's neck matched the elastic band of the torn blue garment. Tests confirmed that it had been used as the weapon to strangle her. Sixth clue. Bits of skin were discovered beneath Ellen's fingernails, showing she had tried to resist her attacker in her final moments. Beyond these findings, there was little else. Neither Ellen nor Edward had a criminal record, nor did they appear to have enemies. At first glance, revenge seemed unlikely. Given the evidence, investigators speculated that the motive might be tied to a relationship. They wondered, had Ellen brought someone home while Edward was away, only for things to spiral out of control? Perhaps a heated moment ended tragically, and the man fled in fear. Still, this theory had serious holes. Most puzzling was the absence of foreign fingerprints anywhere in the house. Had the killer wiped the place down meticulously? Or had this mystery lover never existed at all? With no witnesses and little physical evidence, the case quickly became a major challenge for police. In criminal investigations, when there are no clear leads, detectives often begin with those closest to the victim. After Ellen's body was discovered, the police immediately notified her husband, Edward. At that very moment, he was still out at sea, seemingly carefree on vacation with his friends. The authorities instructed Edward and his group to sail their boat to the nearest harbor where police were waiting. After a short round of questioning, his 4 friends were released. Edward, however, was kept for further, periodic interrogations. During one of these sessions, investigators asked about bits of skin found beneath Ellen's fingernails. Without hesitation, Edward replied, "Oh, that must be from when my wife scratched my back the other day." This statement raised alarm bells. The police had not disclosed to anyone that skin samples had been found, nor that they could be connected to a suspect. Edward's quick answer sounded like a confession he hadn't been asked to give. Making matters worse, he also had 2 deep scratches on his wrists, details that only heightened suspicion. Testimonies from neighbors and friends painted an even stranger picture. One neighbor, Charles, recalled, "Around 7 p.m., on the 2nd of August, I was walking with my family when I unexpectedly ran into Edward. He stopped his car and chatted for quite a while. That had never happened before. Normally, he barely said a word." A friend named Bill, who joined the boat trip, added, "That day was sweltering hot. Everyone wore t-shirts and shorts except Edward. He insisted on long sleeves and long pants, and although our trip was scheduled to start at 10 p.m., Edward kept pressuring us to leave earlier. Eventually, we set out at 7:30. At around 8 p.m., Edward stopped at another friend's house to use the phone, saying he had something urgent to tell Ellen. But when he dialed, his words were anything but urgent. "Honey, if you need anything, just ask the neighbors. I'm heading out now. Goodbye, love you." Later, once at sea, he repeatedly called home, as if determined to project the image of a caring husband. On the surface, these calls made Edward look thoughtful, but the reality was far darker. Neighbors revealed that, despite Ellen being 5 months pregnant, the couple's relationship was deeply troubled. Edward had a reputation for infidelity, openly bringing other women into the house. He was also involved in so-called swingers clubs. Ellen had tolerated it for years, but the problems were never resolved. Edward even had a daughter with an old flame, Nancy Price, with whom he maintained a murky, ongoing relationship. As the legal wife, Ellen couldn't accept this. She tried to confront Nancy multiple times, but to no avail. In a desperate bid to save her marriage, Ellen believed that having another child might tie Edward back to her. She convinced him, and soon she was pregnant again. But Edward wasn't the type of man to be bound by responsibility. Once Ellen became pregnant, he grew even more restless, struggling to split his time between his wife and Nancy. Eventually, Nancy pressed him to divorce Ellen and marry her, threatening to leave otherwise. Yet almost all of the couple's assets, the house, the cars, the photography business, were in Ellen's name. Divorce would leave Edward nearly penniless. Weighing the risks, Edward chose to stay with Ellen, promising to end things with Nancy and support their child financially. Ellen, relieved, thought she had won. But in truth, her nightmare had only just begun. Neighbors later revealed that Edward often abused Ellen. Just 2 months before the tragedy, on Father's Day, the couple had a violent argument that left Ellen's face and body covered in bruises. Another former lover of Edward's testified, If I ever disagreed with him, he would lash out physically. After that Father's Day fight, their marriage was essentially broken. Soon after, Edward returned to spending nights with Nancy. When Ellen discovered this, she was devastated. To a close friend, she confided, "I'm done with Edward. I want a divorce. I'll never give him the house, the business, or the kids. I just want him gone." Just before Edward's boating trip, the relationship appeared to calm down slightly, but it was an illusion. Infidelity and constant conflict still loomed. Clear possible motives for murder. Yet a crucial autopsy report shifted the direction of the investigation entirely. Dr. Catherine Galvin, the former chief medical examiner of Connecticut, initially concluded that Ellen's time of death fell sometime between the night of the 2nd of August and the morning of the 4th of August. Within that window, Edward had what appeared to be a flawless alibi. He was out at sea with 4 friends. That conclusion left investigators baffled. For the time being, suspicions against Edward had to be set aside. Once again, the case slid into a standstill, with no new leads to pursue. Meanwhile, Edward inherited the couple's shared assets worth around $173,000. He also collected a $76,500 payout from Ellen's life insurance policy. After negotiations, Edward offered just $15,000 to Ellen's elderly mother for living expenses. Despite his wife's tragic death, Edward showed little visible grief. Almost immediately, he moved in with his old lover, Nancy Price. Together, they purchased 2 homes in Old Saybrook and began living in comfort. While Edward enjoyed his new life, the police quietly pressed forward with their investigation. That secret probe stretched on for 2 years, during which dozens of witnesses were interviewed. Eventually, one of them revealed a crucial clue. Anita Simon, the daughter of one of Edward's boating friends, recalled that on the 2nd of August 1985, Uncle Edward had stopped by her store. They chatted about old movies, and she recommended a newly released film called The Black Cat. Though she hadn't seen it yet, Edward went on to describe the plot in detail. According to Anita, Edward explained how the main character murdered his wife and child at night, then cranked the air conditioning to its coldest setting and sealed the room to delay the body's decomposition. When police heard this, they immediately suspected Edward had borrowed the same method. Investigators then re-interviewed Ryan Fredrickson, the man who first discovered Ellen. Ryan remembered, "When I opened the bedroom door, a blast of icy air hit me. I thought the AC was set to maximum. When I realized Ellen wasn't breathing, I panicked and ran out to call the police. I forgot to close the door, so by the time officers and Dr. Henry Lee arrived, the house temperature had already equalized with the outdoors." That overlooked detail now took on new importance. Dr. Catherine Galvin re-examined the autopsy findings, this time considering the partially digested pasta and shellfish still in Ellen's stomach. Her colleagues confirmed Ellen had eaten lunch with them around 11:30 a.m. on the 2nd of August. After months of review, Catherine revised her conclusion. Ellen had likely died between 7 a.m. on the 2nd of August and 7 a.m. on the 3rd of August. This breakthrough was pivotal, because during that period Edward still had time to commit the crime. He didn't leave for his boating trip until 7:30 p.m. on the 2nd of August. Police theorized that after killing his wife, Edward tidied up the scene, turned the air conditioning to maximum, and left. That would explain all of his odd behavior afterward. Chatting with neighbors, pushing his friends to depart earlier than planned, and constantly calling home while at sea, all calculated to maintain the illusion that Ellen was still alive and to reinforce his alibi. Edward believed everything was going according to plan, but his arrogance, a few careless words, and the curiosity of a child would unravel it all. On the 20th of March 1990, 5 years after Ellen's death, police arrested Edward Sherman, yet the investigation was far from over. Another detail emerged. Before leaving for his trip, Edward had stopped at a friend's house to make a phone call to Ellen. He appeared nervous, even though the friend's young daughter, Jill Onofrio, had been waiting a long time to use the phone. When he finally dialed, his words were unremarkable sweet nothings. Nothing urgent. What puzzled detectives was his urgency. Why was he so desperate to make that call if Ellen was truly alive at the time? Logically, if she had answered, he would have been cleared. Instead, it raised more questions. Jill, only 8 years old, grew upset at being brushed aside. She sneaked into the next room, picked up the extension, and listened in. To her surprise, she heard nothing, just the beeping of a line that had never connected. Edward was talking to no one. Her testimony revealed the deception. Edward had been faking phone calls to Ellen, pretending she was alive, fooling neighbors and friends into believing his alibi. With Jill's account, detectives finally saw the full picture. Edward, despite his high IQ, had overplayed his hand. He couldn't escape justice. In June 1990, the trial of Edward Sherman began. The case relied entirely on circumstantial evidence, making conviction difficult. Here, Dr. Henry Lee played a vital role. He reconstructed the crime scene and linked each indirect clue into a cohesive narrative of how Edward had killed his wife. According to the prosecution's reconstruction, Edward's attack began while Ellen was lying on the bed. Using both hands, he pressed down on her neck. In those desperate moments, Ellen fought back, leaving scratch marks on his wrists. Edward then tore a piece of her clothing and used its elastic band to wrap around her neck 3 times, creating deep impressions. The makeshift weapon was discarded near the bed. To cover his tracks, he turned the air conditioner down to its coldest setting, hoping to delay the body's natural changes and buy himself more time. He urged his friends to start their trip earlier than planned, casually chatted with neighbors to appear relaxed, and later staged phone calls to his wife to create the illusion that she was still alive. He even asked others to check on her, playing the role of a concerned husband. Dr. Henry Lee spent 6 hours in court explaining this sequence in meticulous detail. His testimony, supported by dozens of witness statements, wove the circumstantial evidence into a compelling and consistent narrative. On the 4th of November 1991, after a 7-week trial, the jury unanimously found Edward Sherman guilty of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to 55 years in prison. By the time Edward was convicted, 6 long years had already passed since Ellen's death. Her elderly mother, frail and grief-stricken, struggled to accept that her son-in-law had taken her daughter's life. Yet she found a measure of comfort knowing that justice had finally been served. Edward never admitted guilt, but just 3 years into his sentence, he died of a sudden heart attack behind bars. Looking back, investigators acknowledged how difficult the case had been. With limited forensic technology at the time, progress might never have been made without 2 crucial witnesses, Anita Simon and young Jill Onofrio. Their testimonies cracked open what could have remained a permanent mystery. Friends once praised Edward's remarkably high IQ. He often bragged about his intelligence and enjoyed belittling others with it. But as the trial proved, there's no such thing as a genius criminal. By committing murder, Edward revealed not brilliance, but the ultimate failure of judgment. When Edward and Ellen first married, they likely believed in a bright future together. But love can fade, and when betrayal enters a marriage, consequences follow, sometimes with unimaginable weight. Marriage is not only about sharing joys and sorrows, it's about responsibility and care. For Ellen, Nancy, and the children caught in the middle, the fallout of Edward's choices meant a broken family, scars that time could never fully heal. And so, with justice served and lessons to be learned, this case closes. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.